Hey everyone, so have you ever been told you have an accent, or maybe that you're not speaking properly? Well, today we're going to dive into the really fascinating and often misunderstood world of language. We're going to see why the way you speak isn't just correct, it's actually a map of history, your community, and your own unique story.
So let's just kick things off with this incredible quote. It really gets to the very heart of our topic today. See, what we usually think of as a language versus a dialect, well, it often has a lot less to do with the language itself and a whole lot more to do with power and politics and history. It's a huge idea, and we're going to keep coming back to it.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really get that whole Army and Navy idea, we first have to get our basic terms straight. I mean, these words are thrown around all the time, right? But for people who study language, they have very, very specific meanings. So let's break it down, and we're going to start with the smallest, most personal unit of all, you.
That's right, you. Your idiolect is basically your own personal, unique linguistic fingerprint. Just think about it for a second. The specific words you choose, the rhythm of your speech, all the little quirks you have. No two people on Earth speak in exactly the same way. And that individual speech pattern, well, that's your idiolect.
So then, a dialect is just what happens when a whole group of people share those kinds of linguistic habits. And here's the single most important part. A language isn't some pure, single thing, it's just the collection of all of its dialects. So if you speak a language, you speak a dialect of that language. End of story.
And finally, what's an accent? It's pretty simple, actually. It's just the sound of a dialect. It's all about the pronunciation. So when you hear someone with, say, a Southern drawl, or a Boston accent, or a British accent, you're just hearing the specific sounds of their particular dialect. And here's the thing, everyone has one.
Which brings us right to our first big myth. This is the idea that some people out there, maybe TV news anchors, speak a normal or correct version of a language, and that everyone else is the one with an accent. Okay, let's totally tear that idea down.
The reality is, what we call standard American English is just one dialect among thousands. It's not linguistically better or more correct. It just happens to be the one that, through history, gained a certain social and political prestige. Thinking there's one normal way to speak is kind of like thinking there's one normal way to be human. It just doesn't make sense.
For a perfect example, just take the letter R. Okay, so back in 18th century London, it was actually super fashionable to be R-less, to say "park the car." This fancy way of talking sailed across the ocean and became the prestige accent in places like Boston. But then, a new wave of settlers came from northern England, and they proudly pronounced all their R's. They moved west, and pretty soon their way of speaking became the standard that a lot of people hear today. So what does this all mean? The crucial point is, pronouncing the R or dropping it is neither right nor wrong. It's completely arbitrary. In one time and place, dropping it was considered high class. In another, keeping it became the standard. It just goes to show that our judgments about speech are entirely social. It's all about who has power, not what's linguistically better.
Okay, let's move on to our second myth, the idea that some dialects are just sloppy or illogical, basically bad versions of a language. This is a really harmful misconception, so let's look at a case study that shows just how wrong it is.
We're going to take a look at African American English, or AAE. Now, for way too long, it has been unfairly stigmatized, dismissed as broken English, but linguists have shown time and time again that AAE is actually an incredibly systematic and logical dialect with its own complex and very precise grammatical rules.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it shows the hidden genius in AAE grammar. In standard English, if I say he's happy, it could mean he's happy right now or that he's just a generally happy person. It's kind of ambiguous. But AAE makes this brilliant distinction. He happy means he's happy right now. But he be happy, that means he is habitually happy, that it's an ongoing state. It's not a mistake, it's a more precise grammatical system.
And what about something like the double negative? People love to call "he don't know nothing" illogical. But guess what? That exact same grammatical structure is perfectly correct in French, in Spanish, in Italian, and it was even used by Chaucer in the Canterbury Tales. So it's not a sign of confusion, it's a totally valid grammatical tool used all over the world.
All right, let's get to our final myth, and this one brings us right back to our Army and Navy. We really like to think that there are these neat, clean boxes for languages and dialects, but the reality on the ground is so much more of a beautiful, blurry mess.
So the general rule of thumb that linguists try to use is something called mutual intelligibility. Basically, if two people are talking and they can pretty much understand each other, they're probably speaking dialects of the same language. If they can't, they're speaking different languages. Sounds simple, right? Yeah, well, it breaks down pretty fast in the real world.
And this just illustrates the point perfectly. Speakers of Serbian, Croatian, and Bosnian can all understand each other with no problem. Linguistically, they're dialects of one language, but because of national politics, they are insisted upon as three separate languages. Now, flip that around. A Mandarin speaker and a Cantonese speaker can't understand each other's spoken language at all, not a word, yet they are called dialects of Chinese. Again, for political and national reasons. The Army and Navy win again.
So if politics is drawing all these lines on the map, what does the linguistic reality actually look like? Well, imagine it as a long road trip, a journey across what linguists call a dialect continuum.
Let's start our trip in Vienna, Austria. You hop on a bike, and the people all around you are speaking a clear dialect of German. Everything's fine? You understand them perfectly? Now you start riding your bike west. In the very next village you get to, the German sounds just a tiny bit different. In the village after that, another tiny change. But here's the key. Everyone in one village can perfectly understand the people in the next village over. The changes are super gradual, almost unnoticeable. You just keep going, village by village, until eventually you arrive in Amsterdam. And suddenly, you realize you can't understand the people back in Vienna anymore. The language you're hearing is now Dutch. All those tiny little changes added up. But at what exact point did you cross from German into Dutch? You didn't. There was no line. That border is just a line on a political map, not a linguistic one. So, okay, after busting all of these myths, what's the big takeaway? Why is it so important that we see language not as a matter of right or wrong, but as this incredible map of human identity?
So here's the bottom line. Every single dialect is a complete logical system. Every judgment we make about them isn't scientific, it's social, and it reflects history and power. And most of all, this amazing variety isn't some flaw in language, it's one of the most natural and, honestly, one of the most beautiful things about being human.
So the next time you think about your accent or the way you talk, please don't think of it as some kind of deviation from an imaginary standard. See it for what it truly is, a living, breathing piece of your history, a direct connection to your community, and a huge part of your own personal story.
Every dialect, every idiolect, every single accent tells a story of where we come from and who we are. It's a story written in sound. So the final question I want to leave you with is this. What story does your language tell?